Chasing Lincoln's Killer, written by James L. Swanson. Leading up to the assassination, John Wilkes Booth, a very famous actor who despised Abraham Lincoln. Booth was very against the Union, and he wanted to be known as a hero. He had a rather large ego. Booth wanted to assassinate Lincoln and a few other Union contributors. He formed a group to help him with this plan. His team members were George Atzerodt, Lewis Powell, and David Herold. Atzerodt was to kill Vice President Johnson, and Powell was to kill Secretary of State Seward. Herold would act as a guide for Powell. Booth had also a big role in this plan. His job was to kill the president that night at the theater. The president, his wife, General Grant, and his fiancée were going to Ford's Theater to see a play. Booth's plan was to kill Abraham Lincoln while the play was going on, so not to erupt a lot of attention to himself. Lincoln's assassination. Booth's plan to kill Lincoln involved many steps. First, to get up to the president's box. Next, to slide inside without being noticed. Then to take his weapon of choice, a .44 caliber gun. This gun could only be fired once, so Booth had to hit the president spot on. Booth then had to wait for the line in the play that would make everyone laugh so he could fire and the noise would blend with the noise of the laughter. Once Booth fired, the president fell forward and his wife, Mary, screamed, causing commotion. General Grant saw Booth and tried to stop him. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful. Booth tried to jump from the box, but his foot got caught in a flag and he landed awkwardly on the stage. He broke his leg. Once Booth had regained himself, he began to flee. There had been a man holding his escape horse. Meanwhile, the rest of Booth's team were going on with their part of the plan. Atzerodt had given up and went drinking. Powell had executed the plan perfectly, but he had gotten lost when Herold had left him. Herold and Booth had met up again a few miles from the bridge. Booth and Herold's first place to visit on their escape route was the Suvert Tavern. Lloyd Suvert had been given orders to give Herold binoculars and another gun. Booth had stupidly told Mr. Suvert that he had just killed the president. The team moved on to their next location, the Mudd Farm. Samuel A. Mudd was a doctor willing to help the team. Booth got medical help he needed, and the two of them stayed there for a while. They decided they needed to keep on the move and left the Mudds. The cavalry was getting closer and closer. After leaving Mudd's house, Booth and Herold showed up at the doorstep of Cox and his home in Rich Hill. Booth and Herold were worried that they would be found, so they hid in the pine. They did not make a fire or a lot of noise. Cox sent for his friend Thomas Jones. Jones could take Booth and Herold across the Potomac River to Virginia. Cox brought news to Booth. Booth was not happy that he was seen as the devil even to the south. They waited in the woods for 4 nights before finally getting on a boat. Booth and Herold had mistakenly gotten lost in the river. Booth and Herold had come to the Hughes farm by mistake while trying to cross the Potomac, but were led to the home of John J. Hughes. They ended up as Elizabeth Queen Berry's house. She wasn't that hospitable. Then they went to Dr. Surratt, who allowed them to eat dinner in his home, but then sent them on their way. Lucas, one of Dr. Surratt's neighbors, also helped the fugitives. He got them a carriage and some horses. Booth's last stop was the Garrett farm. Booth lied to the Garretts about his true identity. The Garretts began to trust those two less and less. The cavalry was also getting closer and closer every day. John Garrett got tired of the guests and locked him in the tobacco barn. The cavalry arrived and the two fugitives were locked in the barn. Herold decided to surrender to the cavalry, but Booth was not going to give this up. Booth saw this as his final act. Corporate shot Booth. Booth was rescued out of the burning barn. Booth died a few hours later. His last words were useless, useless, as he looked at his hands. Works cited.